How do you do? Welcome back to Texas History. This is Wednesday, April 1st, lecture number 9. I believe we're going to pick up with page 492, Farming Thrives. So if you can go ahead and have out your notes and your textbook, we'll begin here momentarily. I do want to give one small announcement after I do my shirt of the day, SWAT like Watt. Shout out to JJ Watt. All right, so now that we got all the most important things out of the way, I do want to make an announcement concerning your lectures. So I get emails from time to time throughout the week of people saying, I can't find the turn in button or submit button after I watch the lecture. I watched it, and that's great. And that's fine that you're letting me know. I want you to understand, while it is an assignment and it shows up in your grade book, it is not a grade. I only create your lectures as an assignment because it allows me to put a due date on it. And it shows up, if you look at the screen, it shows up right here in the upcoming, section right here, showing, it kind of gives you a guideline to keep you organized. It is not a grade. So if you turn it in, that's fine. If you don't click the submit and turn it in and it shows up as missing in the gradebook, that's fine. It is not a graded thing. So you don't have to let me know that you've watched it. As long as you watch it, you're good, whether you turn it in or not. Now, with your reading assessments, please note that you can use your textbook to answer those questions in the reading assessments. I've lately been grading them as a completion grade. However, if I begin to notice that people are missing like all of the questions on there, and I can tell that they're just clicking answer so that they could submit it and get a free 100, then I will begin to start grading these for accuracy. So please make sure that you're doing those reading assessments to the best of your ability. All right, so let's pick up with the PowerPoint. Roman numeral 3, Farming Thrives. And in your textbook, on page 492, Farmers Settle on the Frontier. With the creation of the railroad and the extension of railroads into West Texas, we begin to see more and more farmers extend into Western Texas and northward into the Panhandle. And the reason why they're moving westward is because now, with the Indians being moved onto reservations, there is plentiful and abundance of land. And a lot of it's cheap. The government says, we'll give you cheap land if you want to come out here and try to farm it. Now, that lure of cheap land and plentiful land was just too much for some settlers. And so there were some settlers who left East Texas and went to the West in order to farm. Now, that does come with a downside. West Texas, if you think about the climate there, it's a dry climate. It's nowhere near the coastline. It's not a moist climate. There is not much rainfall at all throughout the year. And so farmers, if they moved out west, they were going to have to adjust their methods of farming. Let's go ahead and look at capital A. Farmers in East Texas had the advantage of a moist climate, and that's because they are closer to the Gulf Coast. And also, if you think about the Piney Woods region, they receive a lot of rain every year. And so they have it easy in that they have a lot of rain. They don't have to really worry about moisture. Now, I shouldn't say they have it easy because they have to put in a lot of the work and they have to pray for rain and pray that they have a good abundance of crops. However, they have an advantage over those in West Texas. And so let's go ahead and look at some of the farming methods that these farmers had to use in the West Texas and the Panhandle. One of the techniques they used was dry farming, and we call it dry farming because they're farming in a dry climate. And so dry farming, one technique is that they would plow pretty deep into the ground, but they would leave a layer of topsoil that was loose. And this loose topsoil was there so that whenever it did rain, which was rare, it would soak up that rain and it would keep the soil moist. Instead of just having one solid hard layer where there was a lot of rain runoff and things of that nature, it would absorb the rain and keep that topsoil moist for those plants. It would slow evaporation. Farmers also had to choose the right crops. What type of crops grow well in a dry climate? Well, it turns out that cotton, sorghum, which is a grain used to feed cattle, and wheat grew really well in a dry climate. They also had to practice crop rotation, which is where you rotate the crops that are grown each year. So one year you would grow wheat, the next year sorghum, the next year after that cotton. And so this keeps the soil fertile and it keeps the nutrients in the soil. We also see farmers use a method of leaving their field fallow. If they leave a field fallow, that means that they don't plant anything for a season or for a year. And this allows the soil to kind of regroup itself and recoup its moisture and its nutrients. And so by not planting anything, you're allowing the soil to stay fertile in nutrients. So choosing the right crops is important. Crop rotation, extremely important. Leaving a field fallow, not planting anything on it for a year is important. And also leaving that loose soil on top, that dry farming technique is also important. Now, let's talk about one of those crops that did really well in a dry climate, cotton. Cotton became king in the South. Many people referred to it as King Cotton. And after the Civil War, we see the production of cotton rise significantly. In 1879, it says in your textbook on page 494, that in 1879, farmers produced over 800,000 bales of cotton. But by 1900, 31 years later, Texas was able to produce 3.5 million bales of cotton every year. And so we see the cotton production rise significantly over that period of time, meaning that cotton was the most important crop in Texas at the time. Okay, so that does it for today's lesson. We are going to finish the chapter on Thursday, and then we are going to have a Quizlet Live review on Friday, and your test over chapter 19 will be on Monday. Before I leave, I have a poll question for you, and this poll question is brought to you by a nightmare that I had last night. I dreamed that my wife and I, we were looking for houses, and in one of the houses we were looking in, there were just black widows everywhere, like webs everywhere. Everywhere you turned, you were like moving into a web. There were black widows coming down from the ceiling. Like it was awful. So that brings me to my poll question. What is your biggest fear? Do you have a phobia? If so, what is it? I'm going to post this question on your stream page, and you can put your answers below that. Keep them classroom appropriate. Please know that I am praying for you and your families to stay safe and healthy. I'm also want to encourage you to stay active, do anything to keep yourself sane and healthy as well. Care about you guys. Hope that you continue to do well in this distance learning. All right, take care.